Okay, codependence and relationship triggers. I'm Cheryl Fidelman, the Conscious Codependence Coach. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about relationship triggers and two different kinds. So we can be in a triggered state, but still be in relationship to ourselves. We can be in a triggered state, which means our nervous system is flooded. We might be a little bit confused. We have a lot of sensation and emotion and going through our body. But we're aware that what is happening within our body is not directly connected, just triggered by somebody else's behavior. When we're in a codependent trigger, is when we are having a similar experience, but we think somebody else is doing that to us. Somebody else is making that happen within us. So we outsource our trigger. So codependence and relationship triggers is what I'm going to be chatting about in this video. Please like or subscribe to my channel. Keep the comments coming. And okay, here we go. Codependence and relationship triggers. So I'm going to say a little bit more about what I mean by codependence and what I mean by a trigger, because I think both of them can mean many things. So in my work, the conscious codependence process, I like to go with a very simple definition of codependence, which is anytime your reality depends on another person. Anytime your feelings or emotional state depends on another person. Anytime your sense of safety depends on another person, right? So somebody else's behavior keeps depicting how you feel. So your nervous system, your reality is hooked on another person. They're talking to me, they're not talking to me, they're happy with me, they're not happy with me. So everything depends on them, and then our behavior follows. So we look towards their experience first and our experience second, because our experience depends on their experience, and what we're projecting in their experiences, what we're interpreting their experiences. A lot of codependence is about us just being in somebody else's mind, wondering what they're thinking, or just being right about what we think they're thinking about us or about somebody else, and then we're orienting to what we think is happening in their world. So that's my brief overview of codependence. So many more of my videos, if you want to check out, where I go deeper into just more and more layers of codependence. I have 52 distinctions in my work, but that's my quick overview of codependence. A triggered state is when there's so much happening in our body, somatically, cognitively, meaning in our nervous system is dysregulated. We have a whole slew of thoughts going around that we can't even get ahead of, right? All of these thoughts, all of these emotions, all of these sensation, right? Heart rate increase or armpit sweating. Those are common for me. When I get triggered, I get the armpits, I get the heart rate, my neck, it gets tight, but, different series of sensations for different people. And sometimes we're not even connected with our sensations when we're triggered, because we're so much more connected with our mind and what's happening with our mind and all of the thoughts. One might call that anxiety, when our mind is doing one thing, our body is doing another thing, and we can't get any of it aligned, right? We can't get any sort of grounding or agency or inner alignment or inner peace in those moments. You can also check out my video that I did about codependence and anxiety. There's a recent video. I'll actually link it below. So we can be in a triggered state, which is similar to what I just described, and be aware that that trigger is coming from us. We know that our nervous system is doing things and protecting us often from perceived threats. Or it might think it's an actual threat, and then once it realizes that it's not, there is no threat, there's still some acclimating, we're still off. And that is often how anxiety happens. It's not always a direct reaction. Sometimes it's an after effect where we know we're safe, but our nervous system is still acclimating, right? It's still acclimating to the idea of being safe. It's safe. It's still in protection mode, coming back to the present moment. So anyway, having said all that, somebody may say something and we may go, you're mad at me, you're blaming me, you're angry at me, you're making me feel scared, you're scaring me, right? So we're outsourcing our experience. So we're telling somebody else that they are creating our experience. That's what I would call a codependent trigger. So a codependent trigger is we have a whole bunch of flooding inside, could be thoughts, could be emotions, could be sensations, could be any combination of those three, and we go, somebody else is doing this to me. Somebody else is causing this to happen within me. They might be misinterpreting you, right? Or their voice might have been gone up a little bit in tone or octave or emotion or passion. And then we feel, oh my gosh, they're mad at me, or they are going to punish me, or they hate me, or whatever that outsourcing is. And then we outsource our feeling, and then we want them to see what they're doing to us, and we want them to see their impact on us. This is where I think things start to get into that where narcissism and codependence sort of overlap, and I'll also put a link to that recent video where I spoke about that. When we outsource our experience, what is kind of a mixture of narcissistic and codependent about that is we're projecting our reality onto another person, and they might not see that reality. And then we think they're gaslighting us because they're not seeing their impact on us. It's very hard for somebody to see and get their impact on you when we're blaming our experience on them. So if I say, you broke the bond between us, or you're angry, or you're making me feel unsafe, that person might go, I'm not doing that. I'm not making you feel unsafe, because they have no idea that the impact that they had on you. And so then we go, well, you think you're saying that you are not making me feel unsafe, so now you're gaslighting me. If I say I feel unsafe, I feel as if the bond between us is damaged right now. I feel scared. If I speak to how I feel and what is happening within me, and I can start to be able to tell the difference between how much of my experience really directly has to do with your behavior, and how much of it is being triggered, we're using the word triggered, by my nervous system now remembering something. You've triggered a nervous system memory for my nervous system to start to come online and start to protect me, right? This is the difference between a trigger and a codependent trigger. A codependent trigger is when I start to have an experience and I go, you're doing this, right? A regular trigger, or a trigger coming from sovereignty or independence of being, which is the antithesis of codependence, is when we can tell the difference between what's happening in my experience that was directly influenced by you and what I brought to that moment, to that behavior, to that interaction, to that sense of self-protection. Another big telltale sign, if you're in a codependent trigger, is if you're past tripping or future tripping. And of the 52 distinctions of my work, these are just really the most commonly used one. I would say future tripping is the most commonly used one, because there's so many ways in which codependence, in our codependent moments, we future trip way out of the moment. I mean, codependence is not a present moment act or behavior. In our codependent moments, we are not in the moment. We are in the future, or we're in the past. We're in the future 6 seconds ahead or 6 years ahead. We're in the past 6 seconds ago or 6 years ahead. It could be any amount of time. So when it comes to being in a codependent trigger, a big part of it is believing the thoughts that are future tripping, right? Which is, okay, you're mad at me, which means you're never going to stop being mad at me, and you don't like me, and we should just break up, and this is just not going to work, right? So we just go all the way. We just go all the way to the end. And now we're all the way in the end in the future tripping moment, and our trigger increases because we are in the future trip that we have created from that trigger, from that original trigger. Now we're not even here at all. We get completely blown out of the moment, right? Or we go into the past and go, that facial expression is really familiar because when I saw that person do that same facial expression in 2012, this is what it meant then, so it must mean that now. And so we are not in the present moment with another person. Being in the present moment with another person is true intimacy. That is true intimacy. Being in the visceral experience of the current moment, which is being able to hold your sensations and emotions of the now. Not your thoughts, but hold your emotions and your sensations. Let them feel you. Don't try to make yourself feel something else. That's another part of a codependent trigger. I'm glad I just thought of that. When we're in a codependent triggered moment, we go, how do I just not feel this? How do I feel something else other than what I'm feeling? How do I get to the end of this feeling? Right? So we just want to feel something else. That is also when a codependent triggered moment. Another codependent trigger is when we take somebody else's trigger personally. So somebody seems really upset, or they go, I'm really angry, and we go, are you angry at me? They must be angry at me. Did I do something wrong? So we're taking somebody else's trigger personally. We're taking somebody else's personality personally. And also, some of us are often so focused on what somebody else wants that we are so in service of what they want that we give them things that they might not even want or ask for. And they go, I didn't want this, or this isn't really exactly what we wanted. And then we go into a codependent trigger. We go, I'm sorry, well, let me get you exactly what you want. Let me get you the thing that's, that you exactly want. Like, how do I be in service to your particular unique desire? And, and then we start to apologize going, I'm sorry that I got it wrong. And while I think that it is truly sweet and can be really nice to, whether it's a romantic partner, spouse, family member, whatever, that you really see somebody and understand them and get to know specifically the things that they like, well, I think that's really sweet. But in a codependent moment, we are serving their preferences and desires by dissociating from ourselves. We're serving their preferences and desires so that we can have, look good in their world out of the codependent illusion of responsibility for their emotional state. When we are trapped in our mind thinking about another person, right? Well, they're mad at me, or they don't like me, or they left me, or they, okay? If in the conscious codependence process, we start to be able to objectify our thoughts so we can choose whether or not we're going to believe them, right? Because a lot of these thoughts are automatic recordings that we're believing. And in our codependent moments, in our codependently triggered moments, most of our thoughts are about somebody else, about what we think about them and what we think they're doing to us and what we think they're thinking. And so when we are trapped in a codependent trigger and we're trapped in this cognitive analysis reaction to our codependent trigger, we are, number one, creating ourselves as inferior to that person that we're thinking of. Because if we're thinking more about them than we're thinking about our own feelings, then they are dominant. We are serving their reality because we're thinking about their reality and we're focused on their reality. So number one, they are the dominant figure in the moment. And number two, our thoughts are dominating our truth. So we can, for the most part, we're codependent to other people. But most importantly, from the point of view of my work, we are codependent unto ourselves. We're codependent unto our own thoughts. We're listening to our thoughts, and we're stuck in the third tenet of conscious codependence, which is the need to prove ourselves. We are proving our thoughts right. We're going, yeah, you're right, they don't like me, or yeah, you're right, they're mad at me, or yeah, you're right, I'm no good, or whatever. We're believing our thoughts, and we're proving them right. And we're having our actions and our emotions follow those thoughts that we're believing. And so our thoughts are the manager of our whole being when we are in a codependent trigger. Now, in my practice, I mainly work with high-performing women, and I help them create healthy relationships and true intimacy. Because that analysis that I'm thinking of works really well for a lot of us in our jobs, right? Just being really analytical and cognitive, it works really, really well. But when it comes to feeling a sense of safety in relationships, being stuck and trapped up in our brain and believing our thoughts, believing and trying to figure everything out actually creates an increased level of not feeling safe, an increased level of not feeling connected to the person that you're thinking so much about, and ultimately, and most importantly, an increased level of being disconnected to self. Being disconnected to our emotions, our sensations, and our intuition, which is really where the depth of our truth is. And this is a huge piece of this work, is to go, okay, I'm triggered, and let me take a break, and let me notice, okay, this energy came in, this person said this thing, this is what happened to my mind, this is what happened to my emotions, this is where my sensations are going. Now let me really get to know myself, which is the first and number one most important person to ever get to know the deepest is yourself. So you can get to know, I know what is coming up, what is impacting and influencing my reaction right now. I know how much of this is mine because I know myself. Because in codependence, a lot of us pride ourselves in getting to know other people so much and figuring them out so much, but we're not figuring ourselves out. We're not figuring ourselves out. So get your free PDF of the 3 tenets of conscious codependence. If you haven't gotten them already, you can go to CherylFidelman.com. The 3 tenets are the want to be wanted, the need to be needed, the need to prove oneself. The PDF will break down common behavioral patterns, common developmental roots, so you can really start to get a sense of, what is a codependent moment. If you can identify that for yourself, if that's what you're looking for, and then you'll also have access to booking a session with me. When you go to my website and put your email address in. So this conscious codependence process is not necessarily about you'll never be triggered again or you'll never have a flood of thoughts again, okay? But you will have agency around your inner experience, and you will have agency around getting to know what is... First of all, what are other people for, right? A lot of us codependents are like, if people are not for enmeshment and they're not for dominating me and they're not, for putting all of my attention and worth and value on, what are people for? I'm not sure that I have some unique or truly enlightened answer to that. My guess is that people are for safe bonding, they're for connection, they're for intimacy, they're for tribe and community to build with and create with and to see ourselves in. Ultimately, so that we can see ourselves. And when we see ourselves deeply, then we can deeply see another without our projection and interpretation on them. And I think that's ultimately what a lot of us want. We want to be seen cleanly, without judgment, without interpretation, without projection. You want to see accurate reflection or receive accurate reflection. And the access to giving accurate reflection is really getting to know ourselves so we know what interpretation we're putting out there, what projection we're putting out there. We're really aware of the lenses through which we're seeing and distorting reality. This is really, really, really important so that we can have non-codependent triggers so that we can diffuse the codependence out of our triggers. And some may call that owning our own experience. I think that's another way of saying this phrase that we hear a lot in the healing world, which is owning our own experience. And that is true vulnerability. When we're with another person, we can say, I'm scared right now. I'm confused right now. I feel distant from you right now. I feel disconnected from you right now. As opposed to you're disconnecting. You're disconnecting. You're not safe. You are, right? As opposed to telling everybody else how they feel and what's happening with them. To actually sit in what we feel and expose it to ourselves, tell ourselves how we feel, possibly tell it to another person. And then, and I'm going to do another video on this, lean into the number one practice of sovereignty, of independence of being, which is curiosity, right? So in my work, we do a whole section on curiosity because that's the number one practice of sovereignty, which is the North Star of the conscious codependence process. So it may look something like, I feel confused, I feel unsafe, I feel disconnected. How do you feel? What's happening with you? What did you mean by that? Can you say that again? Because I might be misinterpreting you. I'm actually not sure what's happening right now. So to lean into curiosity, so we connect with ourselves, what's happening over here, which is the whole process, and then lean into curiosity, which is connection with another. Codependence is the antithesis of connection. Curiosity is connection. Curiosity is our commerce in the codependence world, okay? So, all right. Thank you for listening to my thoughts, theories, and rants. Please go get your free PDF. If you want to book your free 45-minute Decode Your Codependent session with me, the access to that is in my website as well, CherylFidelman.com. Remember, your relationship with yourself is where it all begins. Happy healing and life is now. Okay, bye.